Lauren Smith, and tonight we have David Wilbanks on again. The first time we had him on, we had a little minor emergency, so I am having him back on, and I'm very excited to actually get to talk to him tonight. Before we get into it, if you will please show some love for that hardworking Night Callers crew and hit the thumbs up on whatever platform you're using to listen to the show. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on any more of my upcoming content. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. I just want to let you guys know that we had Michael Ferguson on last week. We have David Wilbanks on this week. And next week, we're going to have Dr. Abel Cunningham. So 3 weeks in a row, Night Callers coming to you. You guys, I'm spoiling you guys for February, I guess. And then I wanted to remind you guys that next month is the Oklahoma Bigfoot Symposium, the weekend of March 10th. And I will be presenting at that symposium. And so I'm really excited to go hang out with my guys and talk about little footers, the next generation. And the following weekend at the end of spring break is the Night Callers Camp Out. So you guys can find more information about that on my Facebook page. Just look for the Night Callers Camp Out post, and it has all the information. And just shoot me a message or a comment on the post and let me know that you're going to be there. All right, I'm not going to take up any more of his time. I'm going to bring on David, and we will see what he has to say tonight. Hi, David. How are you doing tonight?
Good. How are you, Lauren?
Good. I'm happy to have you on the show and that you are actually here tonight. And
Well, it's good to be here.
nobody's sick. Nobody has to go to the emergency room. Knock on wood.
Yeah, don't say that too loud.
I know. Oh my gosh, that's about how it goes, though. I've noticed. It's always something. So I'm glad to have you here, and you are actually just a little bit south of me, a couple hours in Oklahoma. So, I mean,
About an hour and a half.
yeah. So
Not
that's
much.
awesome. We've probably been researching in the same places quite a bit.
Yeah. And I've actually been up in your part of the state a few times too. But the river bottoms down below Grand Lake. I've been there several times. Actually,
Really? Okay.
investigated one of my most compelling um, cases there.
Yeah. I've heard that there are reports in that area, but I've never really talked to anybody that's had experiences there or heard, that's research there. So that's interesting. I
This
did
would
not
have
know that.
This would have been back in 2000, and it was a couple of off-duty police officers that were, well, one of them was sheriff's deputy, the other was a Catoosa police officer, and they were camping down there and had a face-to-face encounter, both of them.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh. I did
that's
not
what,
know that.
and yeah, and the first time that I went to that area, the one guy that was a deputy, he wouldn't even go back down there, and the other officer, he wouldn't stay past close to dark, So
Yeah.
now, eventually, he did go back into that area several times with me, but yeah, that was, I don't know about now. It's been a long time since I've been to that same place.
Right. That's still pretty intense, a face-to-face sighting.
Yeah,
And like I said, I've heard, I think BFRO maybe has some cases around that area, but I've never personally heard anyone tell me about an experience or sighting
yeah.
there. So,
I see in the chat there one of my buddies there, pyromedic. Uh,
hmm
he live and roam in those parts. They're still there.
yeah. I got to meet Pyro at last year's Bigfoot Symposium for the first time. I saw this nice looking gentleman sitting at the table, and my son and I went to go sit and eat our walking, or I think we had fish tacos or something. We went and sat there. I said, "Can we sit here?" And he's like, "Yeah." Sat there and talked to him for a minute, and finally he fesses up who he is. And I'm like, "Oh my God, like you're in my chat all the time. It's so great to finally meet you." That's the one thing I love about going to these events is the people that I get to meet. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it can be fun.
Yeah, they can be very fun sometimes. So that's awesome. So how did you get into before the show we were talking about your long tenure in Bigfoot research. What got you into the topic?
Oh, it's been my whole life, and anyone in chat or that's watching has seen me before knows this story. But basically, back in the late '60s, mid '60s, my mother worked for a veterinarian, and he was interested in the Bigfoot subject way back there, and he had actually contacted Roger Patterson and talked to him about maybe being able to go on one expedition with him or something. It never worked out, but he did get a book from Roger, the one that he wrote called "The Abominable Snowmen in America Really Exist." And every time we was over at their house, and I'm a little bitty kid, man, I would just eat that book alive, just
Yeah.
love it. And so that was the interest in it. And growing up, anytime I could get my hands on a book about the subject or a TV show about it, I was watching it. But you know, fast forward to my mid 20s, I started, officially kind of going out and collecting reports and such. That would have been back in like the mid 1990s. And I was actually a contact for the BFRO in Oklahoma very briefly, but got
Mm-hmm.
to see, I mean, the casino footage thing. I was
Okay.
actually the first investigator on the scene on that.
Mm-hmm.
Followed up by Roger Roberts, who got there later on. But I got to
Yeah.
see that video and all that, so that was really neat.
That is really awesome. That one's pretty infamous here.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and that's
can you go ahead and tell a little bit about that and what your initial thoughts were when you saw it? Just because I know that not everybody is from Oklahoma and it might not mean
right.
anything to them like it does to
Well,
us.
funny thing about that video, the things that I was reading about it, oh, 2 or 3 years ago, whenever I started my YouTube channel, things that I was seeing about that on the internet that people were claiming were not what I saw. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to make a YouTube video and a channel, and I'm just going to explain what I saw there. Well, I started having fun with it, and I'm still doing videos, when I get a chance. But um, at that time, like I said, I was a contact for the BFRO, and I got an email. Um, it's 20 some years ago, but it was from Matt Moneymaker on the deal, saying that there was uh, on a reservation up there in western Oklahoma. Supposedly, there was a Bigfoot up there, and at first I didn't really. First thing I said to him is like, I'm not driving all the way over there. That's on the prairie. There's no coverage, for something like that.
Yeah.
And then he said, but they say they've got it on surveillance video. So I said, I'm on my way. I want to see this. So I got there about mid afternoon, and this was late summer. It would have been in I believe it was August, because my son, who's grown up now, he was about to start kindergarten, so it would have been, about that time. Um, Drive up there, meet with one of the people that turned the report in to the BFRO, showed me around and everything, and then later on about dark, Roger Roberts, who I call him a card carrying member of the BFRO, because he
Mm-hmm.
was the real BFRO guy. I was just kind of a contact. And
Mm-hmm.
he arrived there with a friend of his. I do not remember the name of his friend. Friend's not a Bigfoot guy. He was just, friend of Rogers. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, they led us into the security room there, and they played that video for us. Now, what we saw um, was only a few seconds. It wasn't, like, a long time. If I'm guessing how long what we saw was, probably no more than 10 seconds or whatever. And what you first see is it's a little bit of a glow sort of off to what would be the north at the edge of the parking lot. And what that was, this is the only part of the story me and Roger's a little bit different on, is our
Mm-hmm.
perception of what that glow was. He thought
Right.
it was eye shine. I perceived that it was maybe the street lamps reflecting off the top of his head. But
Okay.
that's the first thing you notice. And then as it comes into frame, now there was um, if we meet sometime, I'll show you the picture of the grease trap that it was. But there was
Yeah.
a grease trap there, which, you call it a dumpster because basically it's a dumpster. But in the middle of the top of it, there's a smaller square lid that they would raise up and put the excess, cooking grease in. And there was a light pole over the grease trap that kind of went up and bent over it like this. So as it got close to the grease trap, it materialized into view. Not
Mm-hmm.
I said materialized, not in a supernatural way. It just came into view
Or
under
it
the
came into
light.
focus. Yeah.
It came into focus there.
Mm-hmm.
Takes a couple of steps, leans over, places its hands like toward the that. And that's where it stopped. That's what we saw. Now we were able to go out there because it was standing directly underneath that lamp that bends
Mm-hmm.
over, and the bulb is about 10 foot off the ground. And we were able to measure up that pole. And even in that slightly, the Sasquatch, they kind of walk in a slightly leaning forward manner.
Mm-hmm.
Even at that height, we was able to ascertain that was 9.5 feet tall. And I
That.
still remember looking over at Roger when we were watching that and saying, wow, they really are real. See, up to that point, it
Yeah.
was just an interesting mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I believe that there was, I was probably about in the 80% category that there's probably something really to this just because of the number of people that were
Mm-hmm.
checking into it. But right then it's like going, okay, 9.5 foot tall. That's not somebody in a monkey suit. Now,
Yeah.
in another thing, the build of the creature, you couldn't tell what color it was because the night vision or whatever, the surveillance is kind of a grayish look. It's not in color.
Right.
You could tell it was dark in color, covered in hair, but it wasn't real bulky as far as like I could see Patty. She's kind of you know pretty hefty gal.
Thick. Yeah.
Yeah, she's
There's no other way to describe her.
she's
She's thick.
thick.
Yeah.
Anyway, this creature was very tall and kind of lanky. In
Okay.
the description I've always used to describe it, I said, take a muscular like NBA player
Mm-hmm.
with hair, and you kind of got that
Right.
feel.
That's
Yeah,
what my mom used to describe her first sighting also. She said it was like an NBA player, but more muscular, more filled out, but still lanky. Yeah.
yeah. Not. I'm not saying lanky like skinny. It wasn't skinny.
Right, right, but
It's
long limbed.
like so. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's pretty awesome that you were one of the first on scene for that one.
I was
That's an
I
infant.
was the
You were
first.
the first. Yeah, that
Yeah,
one's pretty infamous. So that's.
whatever that matters, but
I mean, it's pretty exciting. It's
but
there.
um, I don't know what happened in the video. Everybody asked me, well, if that really exists, then where is it? And it's like, yeah, I mean, it for whatever reason, which not long after that word had got out about it, and people were really trespassing and
Mm-hmm.
kind of making a nuisance of themselves up there. So they shut down people coming in there just running amok.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
who can blame them? If people are showing up at the casino not to spend money, but to say, "Hey, where's the Bigfoot?" That's
Mm-hmm.
business.
Yeah.
But I feel very fortunate to be one of very few that's actually seen that video.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, it's infamous. Um, for Oklahomans, especially for Oklahoma researchers, that's our Patty film, basically. Um,
Yeah,
so
it's not as good a quality as like Patty,
no, definitely not. But
but
it's
um,
something of substance that we have, which is
but being
pretty
able to
exciting.
see it and what I got to see and Roger as well uh, was not a copy of a copy that somebody showed us later. We
Right.
saw it in the casino right off raw footage right off of their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard other people describe seeing different things. Like one report I heard said that, well, it ran up to this dumpster, opened it up, grabbed some trash, and ran off with it. And I said, well, if there's a video there showing that, there's more than one video because that's not
Mm-hmm.
the video that I saw.
Right. I've heard that report or that rumor too, I guess, of the trash thing, but the one that
And
rang true
maybe there is, but it's the one that
was the
I
grease trap.
and Roger saw. It was not that.
Right, right. So you were eventually you started your own website.
About 99, maybe 2000.
So
I
what prompted
started
you to
a
do that?
website. I'm sorry.
What prompted you to do that? I'm sorry.
I don't even remember now. I just thought it. The internet was still relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, you had, of course, at that time, the BFRO website was the most comprehensive
Mm-hmm.
database there. And, of course, and Bobby Short, she had a good one.
Mm-hmm.
You know who she is, right?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
She was. And I've
Was
actually
yes.
had spoken with her in person over the phone several times to get
Mm-hmm.
advice on the website and stuff. And there's a whole another deal there too. She had a good website, and
Mm-hmm.
there were some that were just silly, you know. But
Yeah.
anyway, I just thought, you know what, people are sending me these reports. I'm
Mm-hmm.
investigating them, and I thought, well, I'm going to make me a website too, you know. So,
Yeah.
um, and after Bigfootville, this little dial-up internet service here in town that I was going through, they said, "Hey, man, we got to do something different because you're getting so many views. You're about to crash our stuff." I'm like,
Oh my
"Really?"
gosh.
You know, and they're
Yeah.
like, "You should be making some money off that." Of course, that time I'm like, "How you make money on that?" So, well, you got to run ads and this and that and this and that, and I never did, you know.
Yeah.
But of course, at that time, just the novelty of the internet itself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had that website up for 3 or 4 years maybe. But I'll tell you, after Bigfootville, uh, the nature of the contacts that I was getting was starting to get weird.
Really.
Because before, when it was just my website,
Mm-hmm.
it was sincere people that saw something that disturbed them, sending me their report. After Bigfootville, I started getting contacted by some nutty people. Then
Yeah.
it got to the point where I'm like, you know, the website thing's just not fun anymore. So I
Oh.
shut that
Well.
down and began just doing my own thing with a good friend of mine named Brian Baker. He and I still do a lot of trips to the Combination Mountains and stuff, and we started doing that back in 2002, I believe, is when we started
Mm-hmm.
really pursuing that.
I gotcha. So how did the because I'm assuming you have your own YouTube channel. So I'm assuming that you also get traffic to that YouTube channel and comments and messages.
Yeah.
Do Are you getting kind of the same people contacting you that contacted you through the website, or are you getting more?
Well, of course, website's a long time ago. Very few
Mm-hmm.
people that I run into now even remember it. But as far as are you talking about nutty people and stuff, or
Yeah. Yeah. People
well,
without their theories and
not
ideas.
very many? And I don't, I'm not talking about people having theories. I think nutty. I want to hear all of them. You know,
Right.
that's fine. I'm talking about questionable type people. But yeah, I mean, everybody gets trolls and stuff, but I just don't deal with them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I remember having a conversation with Kerry Arnold one time about that. I said, "How do you deal with trolls?" He goes, I don't have time for idiots."
Yeah.
And I,
Delete
that's a
them.
good deal. So I just don't. Um, I do the YouTube channel for fun and information.
Mm-hmm.
It's being trolled and stuff. That's not fun.
No.
So I just don't.
No.
I don't mess with people. But I've got a lot of this regular folks that kind of keep in contact with me. I got
Mm-hmm.
a good friend up in Massachusetts. He's got a YouTube channel called the No Such Thing Podcast, Cornell, and he's actually been down here a couple of times and been to the mountains with me 2 or 3 times. And then Will Star Mysteries has a YouTube channel. He does especially a lot of historical, like uh, talking on there and stuff. And he came down last October, and we had a lot of movement and vocalization, and something actually tossed a rock into our camp. And he was there, got to witness that, and I was just like, "Wow, that is so neat."
That is awesome. That's awesome. I love whenever you get someone that witnesses it with you. It just, you know, it
Yeah,
just,
and of
that's
course,
the goal.
I don't really do this to try to convince anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's for me. I enjoy it, and if somebody else gets something out of it, that's good. You know.
Mm-hmm. So Bigfootville.
Mhm.
So when you were approached to do that, where were you in your research at that time? Had you had an experience already? Um,
Let's see. No, Wait a minute. Yes, because the Bigfootville was after the casino footage and all those investigations up to that point. But as far as a personal sighting or something like that, no, at that time I had not. I've just been collecting other people's stuff and investigating that. But I
Okay.
mean, first contact was an email saying, "Hey, I wish I still had a copy of it. But Bruce Burgess, he's a documentary filmmaker. He's from the UK. Sent me an email, and I totally blew it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure you are. You know, because I already had and it was through the website, and I thought, well, this is just one of those, you know, people
Mm-hmm.
trying to say something there. Because I'd already had one guy that had been telling me he had killed a Bigfoot and wanted me to meet him somewhere and show her the body, and that got really weird. And I'm like, what? And you come alone? And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Uh-huh.
You know, so I thought it was something like that. But then he kept emailing me, and I checked out his name's like, oh, he is real. And so I
Mm-hmm.
talked to him, and he came to Oklahoma by himself first, just to meet with me, and I introduced him to some people. I got in touch with. He said, you know, other people around there that might like to be a part of it. And I said, well, I can talk to them. A friend of mine, Shelly Harris, she took part in it. Tim Harjo, big Native American guy that's in it, which sadly he passed away a little over a year ago. Him and his son Kajat were a big part in it. But anyway, Bruce come down the first time. It was in, I believe, September of 2000, I believe, or 2001. No, it was in 2001. Um, and met with me. I introduced him to some people, and then I just took him on a drive. We went all the way to the southeast corner of the state and
Mm-hmm.
followed all the way to the northeast corner of the state. So we did that road trip. He got
Yeah.
back on the plane, and then he came back with a film crew in late November. And people always say, "Well, what part of the state did you film that in?" I said, "Well, the first one was actually not far from Ada, about
Mm-hmm.
down around south of Calvin off Highway 75. We filmed part of it there. Then we went to Antlers and
Mm-hmm.
filmed some of it there. And then we went to Broken Bow, um, did some filming there. Then went north to into the Comanche Mountains. I had a cabin that Bruce had rented there. We shot there. Then we went to Smithville, and then on up to Disney and shot a good section of it there in the river bottoms down below Grand Lake, which is where
Nice. Yeah.
uh, two officers had had their face-to-face encounter, and then went from there all the way to Wewoka, Oklahoma.
Oh my gosh.
I was not in that part. I
Mm-hmm.
was there for just a little bit because
Mm-hmm.
that was Tim Harjo was talking to a Seminole tribal elder. They were sitting around the fire, and I was off to the side. And it was really funny because Martin, one of the cameramen, was it was dark at this time, and he set his camera with night vision in a on a branch on a cedar tree there, small, and he was kneeling down talking to it. And part of that's in the show too. But this little boy, I guess, saw him there, and he walked up to us. He said, "Hey, there's a white guy over there talking to a tree."
Oh my
Oh,
god. Aw.
of course, was in the dark. All he could see was Martin is kneeling down talking. Yeah, it looked like he was talking to the tree because he didn't see the camera. So, anyway, at that point there, I asked Bruce, I said, "Hey, do you need me for anything else? I am beat." And at
Mm-hmm.
that point, I mean, we woke is only about 30 minutes from my house. So he's like, no, we're through. This is the last thing we're filming. So I said, well, I'm going home and I'm going to crash. So
Yeah.
that was any
Well,
bit of
that's
we were on the road for I'd say a full week anyway,
it
doing
sounds
that.
like a pretty awesome experience.
It was very fun.
I mean, it sounds like a pretty awesome experience. I always wonder if people go through the documentary experience and how they really feel about it afterwards. But you made it sound like a big road trip and you get to squatch along
Well,
the way, which is pretty exciting.
let me put it this way: I was a lot younger then, very naive about the thing, and I'll just say I was very lucky because I've seen a lot of documentary quote documentaries where
Yeah.
they make the person they're talking to look like a complete idiot. And I
Yes.
remember I told Bruce, "Hey, there's buddy Mark up there, live wire." Um,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, what was I saying? I lost my train of thought. Ah,
The people being taken for a ride
oh
on
yeah,
documentaries,
I
definitely.
told Bruce at the time. I said, "Look, here's the only thing I ask of you." I said, "Do not purposely make me
Mm-hmm.
or anyone I introduce you to look like an idiot because I know these people; they're friends of mine." And
Mm-hmm.
he did, So,
Yeah.
with that being said, if Bruce wanted to work again in the future, I would
Mm-hmm.
have reservations. He showed good character.
That's
Uh,
good.
only, and there for the people here that's seen the Bigfootville documentary. The only thing in there that I wish that they had not done, I understand they did it for effect, but there's the part where Dan Belda, he's the police officer, shoots his pistol into the woods a couple of times. And I've spent the last 20 years since then explaining to people he was not shooting at anything. When him and the other officer had their encounter, they had been target practicing earlier in the evening, and there
Mm-hmm.
was a berm, basically a big mound of dirt there that you can't see. And Bruce asked him, "Would you mind shooting a couple of rounds into that for us?" He said, "Sure," and he did. Of course, the way it's edited in, it doesn't say it, but somebody watching it might get the impression that
Mm-hmm.
he's under siege or something.
Yeah. That answers Alan's question in the chat. He said, when y'all were in the riverbank, what was the officer shooting at? So, yeah, thank you for
Absolutely
answering that.
nothing, and no one or no thing was ever in any danger down there.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you
uh,
for answering that.
not at all.
Okay, so we're gonna branch out from Bigfoot for just a second and then we'll snap back to it. Pyro knows that I have no love for orbs. And he asked me to ask you about your orb experience.
Well, if that's okay for
If that's what it
first,
was, I know. Same here.
well, yeah, for all intents and purposes, that's what it is. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yes, there are lights in the woods sometimes. It's what are they? But this was witnessed by me and another Pete Buffalo Head. He was one of the speakers at Honaby last year too, and he and I and Shelley Covington, Montana, shared the cabin together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at that time. So Shelley. I don't know. Do you know Shelley?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
she was on the back porch of the cabin working on her DNA kit deals that she talks a lot about in her deal. And I was down there looking at the gate, and I could see there's like two or three of these little lights moving at the edge of the woods. I said, "Pete, you see that?" He said, "Yeah, I see that." And I'm like, "Well, that's pretty cool." So I'm thinking to myself, and this is exactly what I think I was seeing, is what kind of atmospheric phenomenon am I looking at that is causing this? Because it was
Right.
last year was very dry
Mm-hmm.
night. Pete saw it too, so I thought I'm trying to get closer to them. You don't get close; they either disappear, drift
Yeah.
further into the woods. And Pete, I still remember Pete. He goes, "David, don't follow those." Now this is a case of two people seeing the exact same thing but having totally different perceptions of what they're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Pete, I said, "Pete, I'm going to follow them, but why shouldn't I?" He goes, "Those are the little people." He said, "They'll lead you off into the woods and get you lost." I
Mm-hmm.
remember, well, I don't need any help getting lost, but anyway, but anyway, that's me. I still think that's what it was, some kind of atmospheric phenomenon. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
light bugs, but I'd try to get closer to them walking down this, and they just kind of were gone after a little bit. But
Yeah.
that's the only time I've seen anything that I could say was an orb. I don't. I'm a pretty non-superstitious person. So I mean, whatever they are, that's my perception of it.
Right. Yeah, Pyro he's laughing because I had an orb experience or whatever it actually was, and I was plumb pissed off about it because I was there to look for Bigfoot and I didn't want didn't want to deal with some orbs. Like I was there to, I was out in the middle of nowhere, and like I was pissed. And I wish that my research partner at the time had been able to turn around and see it and verify it with me, but it disappeared
I
before
mean,
he did.
they were kind of that greenish white type of look, kind of like a lightning bug would be, but
Right.
just bigger. I would say they were probably about the size of a golf ball or something.
Hmm.
Not like huge. Nothing scary. It was just curious.
Mine were pale blue,
Oh,
and it was too pale blue to be the moonlight reflecting on a leaf, which is what I told myself it was for a while there until it disappeared. But it was too round, too big. It was
yeah.
definitely, I don't know what it was.
I mean, they're definitely there. I mean, people see them. What you call them? Ghost lights, will o' the wisp,
Will o' the wisp, yeah.
things like that. I mean, who knows? I don't discredit the paranormal and stuff, but like I said,
Uh, Pyro, um,
what is he? What are you talking about?
he's just being a little turd today. There was an episode in which I had something in my studio with me, and I don't know if it was dust balls or orbs, but they wouldn't leave me alone, and they were zooming around my head, and I just
This was
anyway.
out. You were out on one of your outings.
Oh no, this was in my studio in here, and it was on film. I turned it into a YouTube video. It's called Orbapalooza. If you guys want to go watch me freak
Really?
out over all these little things like flying around my head and having a great time at my expense. But yeah, I think I'm gonna tell myself they were dust balls or dust motes. But a friend of mine who does believe in the Fae, she advised me to
Hey,
put rocks in my studio and little pots of honey to appease them. And I was like, you know what, if I have something in there, whether I believe in it or not, I was like, I'll go ahead and like, if they will leave me and my equipment alone, that's fine. It was a good time though. It was pretty
there were
funny.
gremlins.
That's what I call them when my machines act up like they were. And after I put the honey in there, I've never had another issue in that studio. So,
So Carson says pale blue orbs mean you will find love. Very positive.
oh, good. It took a while, but I did. So thank you, Carson.
So
That is,
what do the greenish ones mean?
I know. Are they like a green-eyed monster? Are they?
But it's the perception is such a big thing, even with the Bigfoot stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because we're influenced by our upbringings and all that stuff.
Hmm.
All of these things, like me looking at it, I'm thinking atmospheric phenomena. My friend Pete see it, and he relates it to his cultural folklore and stuff. I'm not going
Hmm.
to tell him he's wrong. I can be wrong,
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, Pyro's really got you in his sights tonight.
He's tearing me apart over here. I love him though. That person has some incredible pictures. Incredible. And I see a
You're talking
lot of
about the orb.
pictures. No, he does have orb photos as
No, I
well,
saw that.
but he shared them with me at the symposium. And I see a lot of pictures that people share with me, and usually my response is, oh, that is interesting, how, wow. But his they were some of the most compelling pictures that I've seen. So I was really thankful that he shared those with me. But that's perception, like you said. I had a gentleman. He's an amazing individual. He basically hikes like 9 months out of the year. He'll go off and do the Washita Trail and just go off and disappear and live in the woods. And he came up and he had showed me a picture that he got on a trail cam of his. And I felt so bad because he thought it was a Bigfoot's face and shoulder and arm and just this. And he said, "Do you see it? Do you see the muscle? And it's turning." And I was just like, crap, I'm about to have to like bust this man's dreams. I was like, I do see what you are pointing out. However, I just want to show you this. I said, if you look, that's a beak and an eye. I said that's the head of a bird, and it's up close to the frame. So but perception, it looks like a Bigfoot if that's what you know. And it just he was like, oh, okay. Well, I got to get back to my booth, so I'll be back later. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I've lost this man as a friend out of my life forever. And I was very sad, but I respected him too much to let him show that picture to anyone else with that. And so finally he came back over and he was fine. And he said he appreciated my honesty, but I felt awful, but that's what he saw. You know, that was his perception of it.
Well, we got the explanation on the green orbs now.
Green orbs mean healing is needed by you or someone close, physically or mentally. The orbs can offer this healing or warn of need.
Well, I spend a lot of times looking for a mythical hairy monster in the woods, so maybe mentally, you think.
I know. Oh my gosh. You're
I'm
not kidding.
I'm not mental. I've been tested.
I haven't because I'm too scared of what it's going to say. Um, you know, that's something that, you know, the paranormal and people are kind of getting more out there with theories and stuff. And other people are just, they come down on them very hard. And I
Yeah.
understand being skeptic and scientific and analytical, and I agree with that completely. But I think that shutting people down just because they have a theory that doesn't really fit with yours, first of all, we're doing a disservice to ourselves and the mystery, but also, I just, we hunt for this mythical creature in the woods that nobody can get a picture of, nobody can find a body. We all go out in the woods looking for this and truly believe it exists. So let's just let's just open our minds a little and be a little bit nicer to each other about it because we're not
Yeah,
perfect.
I'm people think I'm not real overly opinionated just because I'm not mean about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very opinionated about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, I try to base my opinions on evidence or such that I have found or researched myself, looked into. Um, Big thing, people, and it's inevitable now wherever you're at talking about Bigfoot or whatever, there will be someone there that says, what about Dogman?
Yes.
Somebody asked me at Home Navy, I think it was Home Navy, it might have been Jefferson. So what do you
Mm-hmm.
think about Dogman? I said, I don't think about him at all.
Yeah.
I've never, and I don't mean that. And I've taken reports of people that believe that they saw something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I've never found any evidence of anything like that.
Do you think it's just a snouted Bigfoot
No,
or a species of Bigfoot that has a different?
no, I have no idea. But here's what I'll say. If there is such a thing as what people are describing as a dog
Mm-hmm.
man, my opinion is that that would fit more in the paranormal
Right.
because I don't believe that something like that is a naturally occurring biological entity.
Have you ever heard of reports of snouted Bigfoot?
Recently, but now
Okay.
here's the thing too. We talked a little bit before the show. You've been doing this a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this a long time. Notice the progression over the years about there's such a wide range of what people are describing these days as opposed to take stick structures, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Back in the day, a supposed stick structure, I can't even talk tonight,
It's all good.
um, and I don't drink, I promise. Um,
Me neither.
anyway, a stick structure or a tree usually was one that had been bent over,
Mm-hmm.
twisted, limbs maybe raked down in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's almost like Bigfoot plays with Lincoln Logs or something.
Yeah.
So how do you address that? Do I think all of those are fake? Not necessarily. But I took a picture one time that I showed around of a really elaborate looking structure. And
Mm-hmm.
people were like, that's Bigfoot. And I said, do you know where I took that? They said, why? I said, that's a city park in Edmond.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously made by persons. So have I found structures that I think there's a possibility that's what it is? Yes. But what I kind of look into is if I'm in a place where there's trails and stuff and it's something there that a human could easily do, I generally say a human did that, unless
Mm-hmm.
there's other evidence
Right.
around said structure that leads me to that. Okay, now
Absolutely.
Livewire, who was in the chat earlier, very compelling. I checked into reports on his property there, and on this trail through the woods behind their house, where there was footprints and other evidence, plus that, and I've got a picture of this limb in my book that I took it about 7 foot off the ground, and no tree damage to any other tree there. Something had taken a branch about so big around and just twisted it and broke it open. Now that made me think, that may be something to that,
Mm-hmm.
because there was other evidence around it. So I took that, I took pictures of that as something of interest.
Right.
So, but
Yeah,
I do,
I generally do the same thing just because things have changed so much over the years. I talk about when my mom first started researching and taking me out with her, tree knocks and vocals. If you were to go out and knock on a tree or do a whoop, you would get a response. Now, you're not going to get a response. Generally, you're not going to get a response. Basically, if you knock, you're letting them know you're there. They know
yeah,
it's you. And if you do a vocal, again, they know it's a human. And sometimes they might respond. I don't know if they're feeling froggy, but generally, you don't get you don't get the same responses you would have 20 years ago whenever we first started this.
and
So what you study, you also change.
yeah, to a point. Now I still occasionally do get an answer to a knock or something. Now
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned my friend from Massachusetts, Cornell, that come down. One of the nights that he was there, we were hearing wood knocks off to one side of our camp,
Mm-hmm.
and then down in the creek bottom, something was knocking rocks together.
Rock clacking is
So,
I've seen more success with rock clacking than I have tree knocks in later years, in more recent years.
but that wasn't an answer to us doing it at that time. Now, I have
Right.
been down there camping by myself and stuff. Now, do I think anybody going out there like on a finding Bigfoot where if they get an answer to that, I don't think they're fooling anybody.
Right,
It
right.
may be just like them going like silly human. They think they're sounding like us. Let's yell back.
Mm-hmm. I
Who
think we're
knows?
entertainment.
Gets in their mind,
Usually, the only response I get in more recent years is from the coyotes. And in my experience, the Bigfoot and the coyotes, usually there's one weird whoop right before the coyotes start up. And I mean a split second before the coyotes sound off. So, usually, if I can get the coyotes to sound off, I call it, mild success because there's usually something weird in there with it. But, um,
Yeah, just last about a couple of years ago, a guy down in the Kamishi Mountains down there, close to Wister, Wister Lake
mm-hmm.
down there.
Yes.
He had same experience. Something let out that weird vocalization, and then just right on top of it, the coyotes started
Mm-hmm.
up.
Yeah.
So
Around Falk, actually, they have the weirdest vocals around there. And rumor is that it's the red wolf has hybridized with the coyotes, and that's how the red wolf, has kept from going extinct in that area and all this. We talked to the game wardens down there, and they said if you get vocals or if you get a picture of it to give it to them because they're trying to prove that it's not actually gone from that area. But but they have the weird. When I first heard it, I was laying in my tent, and of course, it's that one time that I walked out of the door without recording equipment of any kind, made it all the way to Falk, 6 hours from my house, and was laying there just kicking myself because this wailing was happening with the coyotes, and I was just like, oh my god, like that's a Bigfoot, that has, oh my gosh, I was so excited, had no recording equipment, I was so upset. And then every time I've gone back, I've heard the same thing, and
yeah,
I've been told that it was the red wolf, so, or
yeah. And the
supposed
thing
to
is,
be.
the red wolf is so close to a coyote.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, a lot of people don't realize we're not talking like something the size of a timber wolf here.
Right, yeah, it's
They're
smaller.
very close, very close. And I was seeing some show here the other night where an area that they thought there wasn't any, they're starting to see them again. So
Yep,
that's exciting, and I
it
hope
really is.
you use this word. I hope as people, we've evolved to the point here that we don't just go kill everything that we don't understand. I mean, you know,
We can hope.
As Europeans, we were horrible. Ooh, there's something really rare. Let's kill it. You know,
Right. Yeah.
like I have. I mean, when I go out in the woods and stuff, camp stuff, yeah, I carry a sidearm.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't kill a Bigfoot. I said, this isn't for a Bigfoot. This is if some crackhead comes up in the camp with ill intent.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
worried about Bigfoot getting after.
No, no, I talked about that on encrypted encounters or encrypted connections the other night and beastly theories. I said, it's not Bigfoot. Um, it's hogs, mountain lions, coyotes, stuff like that. I said, but mostly it's meth heads. I'll be completely honest. I am terrified of someone coming into my camp or near my camp up to no good. And if it's me or them, sorry, I got babies at home. Y'all ain't gonna make it. That's how it
Right.
goes.
Right. I There was one time, and this was about 3 years ago, I guess. I had pulled into a really, way back there area, and I was getting my campfire ready. It was still daylight. I was just making the pit, and I looked up, and a white pickup pulled up right outside of camp. There's
Hmm.
3 guys in it, and I had a sidearm. They couldn't see it from the way I was sitting there, and I was still a police officer at the time, and I had the same weapon. But anyway, I thought, well, they're sitting there staring at me. I could tell they were sizing me up.
Hmm.
And I just thought, well, I'm going to go say hi. So I stood up, started walking towards them. They could clearly see I was armed, and they backed up and left. Well, that tells me there. I've been out there before, and people come up, and it'd be somebody scouting out for a place to deer hunt later, and they're always,
Right.
hey, how you doing? These
Yeah.
people definitely uh,
Yeah.
seeing if I would be an easy person to rob or something.
Yeah. It's the ones that don't interact and do the real slow drive by, pull up, turn around. My mom, she laughed at me. We were in Boykin Springs and around Lufkin, Texas, and I this man, my mom and my kids and I were camping. We were setting up camp, and this man came and put his backpack and his stuff on this picnic table right next to ours. The entire campground was empty, and he put his stuff right next to ours. Now maybe he was lonely, maybe he was friendly. I didn't care, so I tucked my shirt in behind my gun, and I was holding a machete, and I watched him drive by, just stared at him. And my mom's like, Lauren. And he comes back, gets his backpack, and he left. He never came back. And she's like, you scared that man to death. And I was like, and? I was like, him or me? Like, I mean, I looked like a serial killer. I know I did, but I don't set up that close to these women and children. And if you felt like you needed to protect us, then you should have been friendly and said, hey, not just put your backpack there and left. Like, no.
He might have got home and told his wife, said, I'm never camping again.
Probably not.
Business, and this crazy woman with a machete and a pistol staring at me.
Probably. I did. I made eye contact the entire time he drove by. But I mean, that's kind of how us women, especially, we have to make sure that they know that we are looking at them and that we will not hesitate to defend ourselves. I actually I've had that situation at camp before, again with my mom. This man came up and he was asking us about this campsite and all of this, and I was like, no, yes, no. I was like, sorry, we don't know anything about that campsite. And I just kept looking at him like, please go. And my mom was like, Lauren, she was like, you were a bitch to him. And I'm like, Mother, you were friendly and about to give him a hug. We don't know who that man is. He could come back and do something bad to us. Like,
Yeah.
I was raised to be respectful and very friendly and outgoing, and I get that, but I also listen to a lot of murder documentaries. Okay, like a lot.
Yeah. That Now, of course, the area that I go to most of the time now is deeper in from a area that I've previously gone, but it's hard to get to. And if it's been raining excessively, you're not going to get that far in.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's going to sneak up on you there. If you go over the ridge one
Right.
way or the other, it's miles to anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing. Coming in, you've got to go about a half mile of it up this extremely rugged, rocky hill.
Yeah.
You're going to hear them way off.
Yeah. There's an area that I know of like that, and they ain't getting in there quick or getting out of there quick. So
Right.
yeah, probably talking about the same area, but yeah,
Yeah,
there's
we may never know. But the thing is, the areas the area I'm describing is hundreds of places like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there
That
are,
are,
especially in that area, in the southeast Oklahoma, especially.
yeah,
There's some good places. Closer you get to the Arkansas line, seems like the better places there are.
yeah.
Um, all right, so we have a few questions from the chat that I'm gonna run through you real quick.
Okay.
From Carson, David, have you ever been afraid during your encounters, like fear of physical harm?
From a Sasquatch, no,
I'm guessing.
no, not from that. Now I've been in some places in general. I camp a lot by myself, and I tend to trust my gut. I've been in an area before, and this was just this was last year, and somebody had burned off a lot of the underbrush there. And I was hearing movement and stuff outside of camp, and it could have been something else, but for some reason, that particular time kind of gave me the creeps, and I don't get the creeps. People
Yeah.
that go in the woods with me will tell you the same thing. Um, I'm not a brave person, but I'm acquainted with the woods enough. I'm not really that worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
Watch where you step, watch where you put your hand, don't get snake bit. That's the big.
Exactly.
Black bear. I've seen a black bear twice down there in southeast Oklahoma when I'm out camping. Both
Mm-hmm.
times they were a little bit distant. When they saw me, they went the other direction, which
Real
is
quick.
what I
Yeah.
wanted to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now I have a guy named John Hodges took me to an area uh, there by on the other side of Rattan on Little River, where him and his
Mm-hmm.
wife had a possible encounter, and he and I were walking, and we spooked up a wild hog. And those are generally, if a hog's got a way to get away, they go the other way, but they're so unpredictable. I'd be more concerned about that. Here's what I tell everybody about Bigfoot, especially with the missing 411 things and stuff like that. Talking, if Bigfoot is out to get us, he's not very good at it.
Yeah. Well, I tell people their main objective in life is to be as elusive as possible. And now, not to say that they can't be very hungry, very cranky, or territorial, and or sick, and change that MO. But I feel that chomping down on our bones and stuff like that is a real quick way to get them discovered, to bring unwanted attention to their territory or to them. So, especially with technology now, I
Well,
think that, go ahead.
now my impression is they really don't want anything to do with us, but they're too curious to completely leave us
I
alone.
agree with that. I do. Yeah.
So it may be, and these are all just theories.
Hmm.
Nobody knows, but I can give a pretty educated guess based on the time I've spent doing this.
Well, I also think that, we're trying to study them and they're studying us to better be elusive and stay away from us because we are changing the game on them all the time with different technology and expanding civilization and stuff like that. I mean, we have thermal drones now. And so I think that them studying us is their way of staying elusive as well.
Hmm. But I mean, and then again, what's the nature of these creatures? What are they? Now, I remember, and you do too. You said you've been looking into this about 20 years. What was the general consensus back then that these were? They were remnants of Gigantopithecus blacki,
Mm-hmm.
which is very interesting because that's an Asian ape, which there's
Mm-hmm.
no evidence that it was bipedal. The
Right.
only time you're going to see a rendition of a Gigantopithecus as a biped is if somebody's trying to make it look like a Bigfoot. Otherwise, it's a really big orangutan.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, so what would have happened to Gigantopithecus down there in South Asia back 30,000 plus years ago that it would leave the area where its food was, hike across the icy north through a land bridge all the way over here where none of its native food or habitat is?
Mm-hmm.
Not saying it couldn't happen, but what would have had to happen to cause that?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I guess
That,
what do you think they are?
you know, it. I feel like every time I have an answer for someone on that, the next interview I do, they bring along some evidence with them that I'm like, well, hell, you know, I've always felt they're flesh and blood. They're sentient beings. I don't know what they are. I don't know if they're a relic hominid. I don't know if they're some species of ape that's never been discovered. I do know that they are way too damn intelligent to just be an ape. Not that apes aren't intelligent. They absolutely are.
But they're not that level of elusive or intelligence.
That they're
Now,
too sentient. They're too intelligent. And
well, let's throw this in here, especially take up in British Columbia. There's old accounts, and not terribly old as far as historically, of these creatures, a male sometime abducting a female human,
mm-hmm,
one of the Native American tribes, and even producing offspring with it,
mm-hmm,
with her. If those are true, they would have to be closely related to us
right.
because
Scientifically.
you cannot cross a chimp and a human other than just being gross. That just couldn't happen.
Right. It's
You know?
gross, but a baby would not be produced.
Yeah,
But you can cross a horse and a donkey. They are close enough.
close enough.
Yeah.
They're still in that same,
Mm-hmm.
close enough
Range.
for that. Uh, but yeah, I just I don't think that they're just an undiscovered age.
I don't either. I just, that doesn't feel right in all the encounters I've taken, the interviews I've done, the experiences I've had. They're just too damn intelligent, and too, I don't want to say civilized. They're absolutely not. But that intelligence is just, it doesn't feel animalistic to me. So that's
No,
just my opinion.
sometimes it's almost like they're mischievous,
Mm-hmm.
like when they toss
Yeah.
rocks into your camp and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back in March of uh, 2003, me and my friend Brian Baker had a large rock bounced off a tree at the edge of our camp. I'll say large, I'm talking 25, 30-pound rock was thrown with force and bounced off a tree at the edge of our camp. And it, it feels like, well, that was aggression. I'm like, no, aggression would have been throwing it on top of us.
Yeah. Their
My,
aim is not that bad.
my impression was that it was letting us know that it was there and it would rather
Mm-hmm.
us leave. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't leave, but
Yeah. I've had those too, the ones that shake trees and throw trees and all of that and push trees over and there's no reason that they can't push a tree directly onto your tent, but they don't. They
yeah,
throw them in camp. They push them around camp, but they don't push it over onto your tent, and they could easily, and then they get a free meal out of it also, but they don't.
just how as elusive as these creatures are, and undoubtedly massively strong and fast. If they were out to get us, I mean, my goodness, they could do it. You probably would, people talk about taking a gun along. If they were really stalking you to get you, you're gone before you got a chance to pull that gun.
Oh, absolutely.
Now,
And most of the guns we carry, I don't feel like would make that much of an impact on them. I really don't.
I don't underestimate small caliber because if
Mm-hmm.
the round is well placed, there is an account of a person being charged. This happened in the early 1900s, uh, being charged by a water buffalo in Africa. All he had on him was a 38 special, and he
Mm-hmm.
got the right shot on its head and dropped it right before it got him.
Yeah.
Now, is it the ideal weapon for something the size of a grizzly bear? No, but
Yeah.
um,
I've
we
um
I
I've
saw.
heard go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say I've heard encounters of people shooting these things and from the encounters that I've heard it didn't really make much of an impact on them.
Right.
No matter the caliber. So I've kept that in mind when I'm out there with my little 9 millimeter, and I'm like, if it holds it off long enough for my kids to get to the car, maybe, it's like one of those situations that you can do the best you can with what you got. But I just, We have a very lively chat. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But
that's good. I know William. I got to meet William.
yeah,
Yeah,
Will's one of my good friends.
yeah.
I go camping with him and Jason quite a bit. They're relatively new to the topic and they're fresh. I don't want to say passion, but they're fresh eyes and
They're
fresh
unpolluted.
ideas. Yeah, they're not jaded. They're not,
Unpolluted.
and I really enjoy researching with them. And plus, those dudes can hike. Like they will hike and hike and hike, and they don't get tired, which is it's nice. I'm a little bit out of shape right now, so it was a little rough, but I always have fun with them. They're really good people. I'm really glad that I met them. Um, but Will was one of the guys that messaged me and asked if I could have you on, and then I got another message, and you're in high demand. So,
Well, thank you, Will. I appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah, he had nothing but great things to say about you. Okay, what's the closest you've ever been to a Bigfoot from Alan?
Let's see. In all the times that I have been doing this, I've only caught sight of one time, and it was a couple summers ago, and it was across a creek from me. I was solo camping. I hadn't been there very long, and I was unpacking my stuff out of the back of my truck. Across the creek, it was probably about 75 foot away, and it was getting close to dark. There was still some sunlight coming through the foliage over there, and I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. And I didn't just focus back on it immediately because I was thinking tree stump.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's when I looked back, and as soon as my eyes focused on it, it turned and shot off into the woods. And it was a 4 to 5 foot tall, grayish black haired biped, and
Mm-hmm.
it shot off through the woods just like bam. And I couldn't make out facial features. The only thing I could tell is the face was very dark, like almost black, you know. But I don't know if the gray that I was thinking I was seeing was from the
Shine.
sunlight on it,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. It was a grayish black. I've, what I've called it since then is a little Morlock.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember the old time machine
Mm-hmm.
Morlocks there? And I looked up a picture of one of those Morlocks. I'm like, no, it didn't look anything like that. But for some reason, that was
That's what
my
came to
head.
mind.
And but anyway, as it went off into the woods, did not make any racket at all. But after it disappeared in there, I started hearing these like guttural vocalizations on each side of where it disappeared in there. And of course, later I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, going, well, I wonder if that was a young one, and that was where maybe its elders griping at it for being careless and being seen, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it, you know, in my mind, real solid, but it was only for a couple of seconds. You
Yeah.
know, it was gone. So that was about it. You know,
That's not a bad sighting. That's
I've caught a
not.
lot of things with vocalizations,
Mm-hmm.
rock clacks, tree knocks,
Eye shine.
some throwing rocks. Yeah, some with eye shine, and it was never red eyes though.
No, yeah, I haven't ever seen red eyes either.
Only, and this is what I've noticed, and this not to make fun of anybody, but if somebody sends me a report and they're scared to death of Bigfoot and they saw eye shine, it's always red.
Yeah,
You
I've
probably
noticed
know
that as well.
that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A black bear, not red, but has kind of a pinkish
Mm-hmm.
glare. So does a rabbit, you know. So you may
Yes.
have the killer rabbit from Monty Python's Search for Hollywood.
Yeah.
Watch out for that guy.
Yes. No, the eye shines that I've seen have been white, yellow, and orange. Um, and it had also had to one time it was the same kind of palish white blue as that orb I saw, but a little bit lighter. And that was when I had my first and only semi sighting, and I didn't get to see any details or anything. I just saw the moonlight shining down, and I saw the outline of the creature as it was walking away,
Was it
which I'll take.
was
Do
it
what?
big?
Oh,
Was
it
it
was
big?
big. It was big. It was standing in front of the deer feeder and on my mom's front yard actually. But it was a moonlit night and not moonlit enough to where I could see it, but I could see the outline, and I was leaning forward and I about fell out of my chair into the screen of the porch trying to look as hard as I could. And I was freaking out. My mom was just like, she goes inside, comes back out. She's like, talk yourself out of it yet? And I was like, no. And she's like, okay, good. she's patiently waiting for me to have a sighting too. She's talked me back into researching so many times because I've gotten so frustrated over the years not having a sighting that, I've crisis of faith and about giving the whole thing up a few times. So,
I think who over here said something about what do I think about? Yeah, Doug Miller says, what
yeah.
do I think about coon hunters and the many encounters they've had with Bigfoot?
Yeah.
I have received a few reports from people that are coon hunting. Had one of the most memorable here was a guy was out, and this would have been 10 years ago or so, not too far from Ada actually, and his dogs were out there running. And he said all of a sudden they come running back toward him and right past him, going towards the truck, and shining his light to where they were. He saw these wide set eyes looking back at him, and he said at first impression, this first impression, he thought, is that an owl on the ground there? What's it doing on the ground? And he realized what it was is there was a creek there and a big drop off. This thing was standing in the creek, and that was just his like head and part of his shoulder peeking up over the top, and his dogs ran off, and that seems to be a pretty general thing with dogs and Sasquatch. They don't like each other for some reason.
No. They either stick real close to their human or run off, or, the few dog attacks that I've heard over the years, the dog didn't do that. It didn't shut up, and the Bigfoot got mad and silenced the animal. And those are very sad stories, but I mean, you got to think, again, their main goal is to be as elusive as possible, and they have a little alarm system over here giving them away,
Yeah. There was a fella that, and this a long time ago, down in not McCurtain, but LaFleur County, not too far from Honobia actually, had been, and he didn't see anything, but he said there were these weird whistling noises out in the woods around his house. And I was like, well, and he said, I don't know. He said, I've lived in the woods all my life. And he said, it may be a bird this tall, but he said, I don't know what it is. I said, and he had a bunch of dogs. I said, well, the dogs go after it. He said, no, they hide under the porch. And he said, these dogs, I've seen them chase bears out of the yard.
Yeah.
He said, but when this whistling starts out there, they crawl under the porch and they don't make a noise. I'm like, well, that's suspect,
Yeah, that's when you pay attention. Yeah. Yeah, my mom had a little bitty Chihuahua dog, and it was her little Squatch hunter. That dog would go with her on every expedition out into the woods looking for evidence, but if that dog started sticking close to her, she started paying attention to her surroundings even more. It was kind of like, whenever I've noticed still to this day, this is still a thing over the last 20 years, a common thing, but when the woods get quiet, you start paying attention, because the woods around you, there'll be just chaos all through the woods, and then all of a sudden around you it just gets quiet, and that's when I start perking my little ears up. Okay, all right. Alan wanted to know, what type of equipment do you take when you're out researching?
Well, of course, I've got a GoPro. That's my main thing. Those are just so handy and take good video.
Yes.
And I've got a relatively inexpensive video, not video, nothing video anymore, but a camcorder, put it that way. I've got a relatively inexpensive one of those with night vision on it, but I've got some extra IR lights for it, and that really enhances that.
Yeah.
I've got a parabolic microphone that actually Livewire, Mark that was in the chat earlier, he actually gave me that. And it's interesting what he did. It was just one of those basically inexpensive parabolic mics that have a small dish on it.
Right.
And he had bought, what a squirrel baffle is? Those big things you put on your bird feeder. He got one of them and made the bigger dish out of it with that. And that thing will pick up forever.
That's pretty smart.
And I was over, I looked into sightings that were going on around his property there. which was very compelling to say the least. And we were using. He said, "Here, you can have that." And I'm like, "Man, that's very nice." That has came in so useful to me, and I
Hmm.
appreciate that very much. And,
Yep, I've seen some I've seen top of the line Bigfoot gear that's thousands and thousands of dollars that like I don't even want to get near it because I'll break it, you know. And then I have seen, I'm gonna call home rigged um, Bigfoot systems that are just as effective, and the ingenuity behind it is just amazing, you know. But I've seen quite a few. Luke Gross, he made a it was a waterproof cover for his mic and his whole setup, his audio setup, and he made it out of. I think he's reinvented it over the years, but the first one I believe was out of a PVC pipe, and he covered it in bark. And so this thing looks like a branch sitting on the ground, and but it had all of his stuff in it, and it was waterproof. And I've seen so many different variations of stuff like that over the years that it's just ingenious. Also terrifying if you are like me and you have to squat in the woods to pee, and I don't know whose hidden game camera or whatever's around, and I'm
no,
probably peeing on somebody's microphone.
you, yeah, I do pay attention to that. I was camping. Oh, this would have been last summer on one of the days it wasn't 110 degrees. But I was out walking around from camp and just looked up and was like, man, there's a game camera looking right at me. You know, so
Yeah.
the
Well, I
woods
told
aren't even that private anymore.
they're
You know?
really not. At this point, you know, I'll come back from, you know, taking my morning walk in the woods after coffee, and someone will be like, "Oh, hope the game cam didn't get you." And I said, "Well, if I did, those poor people, like I feel bad for them. You know, don't put it next to a place that's perfect for potty time." But I told you before we started the show that I was over in Beach Creek area in Oklahoma, and saw a triple game cam set up with a gift bag of apples hung really high for the Bigfoot.
Mhm.
And I know it was a gifting station, and so we didn't notice it on our way in, which is my power, you know, my observation skills obviously suck. No wonder I haven't seen Bigfoot. But we didn't notice it on the way in, but we noticed it on the way out because we about walked into it. And so I jumped in front of the game camera and held up my business card, you know, night colors, and then stuck it behind the tree strap and did a thumbs up into the camera. And then I told you a few weeks later, I get a message from Joe Pass, and he's like, "Hey, so I caught you on my game cam." And I'm like, "What are the odds?" And I was like, can you send me some stills from that?" Or like,
That's so funny.
he was
I,
really
I
nice
met
about it.
I met him down at the Jefferson
Hmm.
conference in October. Real nice guy. He's a big guy.
Is he? I've never met him.
Yeah, he's really
Yeah,
tall.
or if I have, I don't remember. I've met a lot of people over the years. A lot of people. All right. Tell me about your books.
Okay. Well, I've got two. The first one I wrote is called The Champy, and it
Hmm.
is, you see it, this one right here. And it's a fictional story. It's got enough truth in it. I could have probably put based on a true story, but the stuff
Hmm.
about the main monster is not true. But it's based on a monster in Choctaw folklore. So I took that and I set the story in the mountains of southeast Oklahoma.
Hmm.
So anyway, and then the one that's actual research based is this one called Kayamishi Bigfoot. And
Awesome.
this one is there's a chapter in it about in depth working with the travel channel. There's chapters about some of the areas that I've gone into. Live wire, that's in chat there. There's a good chapter in there about what was going on around his place. And all of that. And then there's a chapter on that's reports that people have sent me that gave me permission to put that in there. So if you want to know a little bit about what I've done on this subject, that goes pretty in depth on it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. The fictional works. I don't think people give those enough credit as they should. Mhm. I've read a few fictional Bigfoot works here lately, and they're just good. I mean, if you think about it, you read fictional stories about your favorite topics all the time. Not every Bigfoot book has to be scientific, just like, and you have one of those, and that's great. And then you also have your work of fiction that's interesting and just downtime. And I think those works like yours, it's perfect downtime for the Bigfoot researcher that just wants to drink coffee and read about, Bigfoot eating somebody. It's fine.
Well, it's the story goes more in depth. Like there's the Bigfoot that's bad. There's something that made him that way.
Okay.
Or,
Even better.
choices it made or whatever. But there is reports that are shared in the fictional book that are true, and there's um, anyway, there's historic because when the guy that is investigating these
Mm-hmm.
disappearances and stuff, he's reminiscing about some old historical accounts where somebody has been attacked or showed up missing, which brings up something else. Like I said earlier, Bigfoot's out to get us. He's not very good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, look at the accounts where, and I'm going to say accounts that I think are probably credible, where a Bigfoot has shown some kind of aggression, were generally preceded by somebody shooting at or shooting.
Mm-hmm.
That's not aggression. There's a difference in defensiveness and aggression.
100%.
Now, if you shot at me or one of my family members,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you hit one of them, uh, that's not going to be a good time.
No.
And I would say these would be the same type of deal. Like, yeah, if you're out
Mm-hmm.
there with your buddies and shoot one of these things, and yeah, what do you expect to happen?
Mm-hmm. Or you go after its food source. That's the only other time I've heard of one being aggressive. Is the Something podcast. The two guys that started that podcast actually started it because they had an experience in deer camp where they had shot a deer. My God, I need to go to bed. And this Bigfoot came into camp later and trashed their camp, raised hell, beat on the side of their camper, shook the camper, left the deer in the gut pile there, didn't touch it, but raised hell because they believe that it was stalking that same deer.
That may be. And we are encroaching ever more and more into the wild areas.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma, my goodness, it's so many people moving here from out of state now
There
and
are.
moving into these wild areas. I mean, have
Yeah.
you been to Hochatown lately?
Oh my Lord.
I don't
It's.
go there anymore
I don't go anywhere near there.
because
Anywhere near
if
there.
you go to Hochatown, you'll be the only Oklahoman there.
Yes, it is
And it's
touristville.
like it's
Yeah.
I mean, I guess good if you're making money there, but I
Yeah.
grew up running around in those mountains down there and it being
Mm-hmm.
so oh, and now you got to pay money even to go visit the lake.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
It's
you know,
the
I don't go there anymore.
one of my favorite campsites in a certain area that I go to. Used to, you go down that road, there were like maybe four cabins along that road, hunting cabins. Like people didn't actually live out there, it's just a hunting cabin. And now there's home sites all along that road and side by sides running up and down it all day long. And I'm like, this
Right.
did not used to be a thing, and it is loud out there now. So, yeah, we are encroaching on their area, and I just wonder if they're going to get more aggressive because they are running out of room. I mean, we have tons of woods in the United States. We have a lot of nature, and but also more
First,
people are hiking and
personally, I think they'll
running
just
out
go
there.
somewhere else
Yeah,
because
maybe.
they have to be nomadic. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
anything that stays in one concentrated area very long is going to leave loads of evidence.
Yeah.
But and I'm sure you've observed this too. If you have a place where there's a hot spot of sightings, just like everybody's seeing it there, it doesn't take long before nobody's seeing anything there anymore.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Like where the casino footage was taking place. One
Mm-hmm.
thing, there's wooded area there with a lot of springs and stuff. Plus, you've got the North Canadian River close there too. But in that condensed area, I think it's just somewhere that every once in a while a group of them will come through there, maybe kill a few deer or whatever food source, and then move on.
Right.
And I think that's now the Kamishi Mountains, which I use that term generically for all the
Yeah, I
mountains
do too.
southeast
Yeah.
Oklahoma. If you want to, I mean, what you got? You got the Kamishi, the Washitas, you got the Jack,
Right.
you got all these and whatnot. But
I usually just say LaFleur County and the surrounding areas, and that seems to encompass pretty much everywhere that you're going to be.
yeah, south down Pushmataha County, McCurtain
Mm-hmm.
County, all of that.
Yeah.
They've still got plenty of wild places they can go to out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I could talk to you all night. You're fascinating. You're full of knowledge, and I very much hope you can make the Night Callers camp out so that I can pick your brain more.
People have told me I'm full of it.
No, no. So I wanted to ask, over the years, how has your way of thinking in your research changed? For me, it used to be going to different areas on expeditions, different states, and I still do that to go visit different outings and stuff, but mine has changed in that I believe going to one or a few areas consistently is going to get me more success. How has yours changed over the years, or has it?
A lot like what you're just saying there. When I was younger, I would go out, beat on trees,
Mm-hmm.
actively hunt. But what are most of the Bigfoot sightings are by people going about their business, whether it's camping, fishing, just driving down the road, and they happen to see it. So
Mm-hmm.
mainly my outings generally consist of this: is a recon, scout the area, look for evidence, and
Mm-hmm.
then go back to camp, light a fire, cook, and just listen,
And hang out. Yep.
hang out.
Same
And
here.
it seems like I've had better luck that way of some potential Sasquatch interacting, just doing
Absolutely.
that. Like when Will from Will Star Mysteries come down last October. Man, we were sitting there. Okay, no fire because burn ban, but it
Yeah.
was a very bright night. So we're sitting there by the fire pit, which has nothing in it, and with our backs to this side, we're facing these creek bottoms that go over
Mm-hmm.
this ridge and down there, listening to that. And behind us in the woods, something let out this wicked sounding roar, basically. And I mean, you could feel it,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow. And we both stood up, and Will's like, that wasn't an owl, was it? I was like, no, that was not. And anyway, and the thing is, behind us, and not long after that, we heard something on the other side there displace some rocks as it went over
Mm-hmm.
the ridge. And I'm like, well, so knowing we should probably just sit there, instead, we get our stuff and we start off into the woods. So whatever it was goes away.
Yeah.
We get back to camp, and by chance, I still had my little inexpensive camera on, and it had night vision. You can't, night vision doesn't penetrate into the deep woods.
Yeah.
But something tossed a rock into our camp, and my camera actually captures the sound of that hitting. And when it did, my first thing is, "Did you do that?" And Will, you can watch the video.
Yeah.
Will, no, bro, no, I'm right here. And I look over at him, and he's got my parabolic microphone in one hand and his phone with the camera on it in the other, and he's just wide-eyed. And then he
Yeah.
starts. I said, "Really, you did?" He goes, "No, why do they do that?" And he's just, why do they do that? I was like, "Man, I don't know," but from
Yeah.
where the rock came from and where the vocalization behind us and then the displacement of the rocks below us, we was kind of figuring there were at least two of them around our camp. And where the rock was thrown from is, I've got a video titled "There's Something Out There."
Mm-hmm.
I was solo camping it at that exact spot, and I caught in the lights something dark crouched down behind this big boulder outside of camp in the woods. And on the video, I was like, well, I think I'm not going to go up there by myself.
Good call.
And didn't, but that's where this rock was tossed from,
Okay.
was over there.
Those
And
are
then
the moments that keep us going.
it is, and it was not thrown at us. It was deliberately just lightly like tossed right at the edge of our camp there.
They were either messing with you or distracting you while the other one crossed.
Well, yeah, maybe so, but I mean, it made, I think, Will felt like it was worth the trip,
Mm-hmm.
flying on there and stuff.
Yep.
So, um, but most of the times that I go out, it's just a fun camp trip.
That's to me. I get to go out in nature and hike and see these beautiful areas and get my nature time in. And if I happen to have some Bigfoot activity, that's a perk. If I don't,
Well,
it sucks. But hey, I
like
got to
last
go.
last summer, I went down there and nothing was going on, and I went down with my GoPro and took some good video of the cottonmouths down in the creek, and I've got one. I did a short of it. There was one under a rock, pretty good size one, and I've got it striking at my GoPro, and I put it in slow motion, and you can see its fangs extend and go by, and I'm like,
That's
hey,
pretty
thanks.
awesome.
Of course, I left it alone. I love snakes. Uh,
Yeah.
but that's there's no Bigfoot stuff going around. I hike, I fish, I take pictures of wildlife.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's the best part of going out and looking for this thing, and and like I said before, those little adrenaline pumping moments that keep you going, that keep you addicted to this.
Yeah,
We're all adrenaline junkies, pretty
I'd
much.
go off in the woods, whether that or not. And
Yeah.
when I first started doing the solo camp thing, was totally by accident. Here, a few years ago, not very long ago, me and my friend Brian Baker were supposed to go down there, and something came up last week. I was like, man, I can't. And I'm like, well, I've already got. I'm just going to go. And
Hmm.
I ended up having a blast. You know, you
It's
know, you never,
awesome.
you never know how you're going to act out there by yourself when it gets
Yeah.
really dark. Because daytime,
Yeah.
it's like this ain't scary, and then it
Yeah.
gets black night out there, and you're like, you really are alone out here. But
Hmm.
it's
Yeah. My first solo, you can listen to it on my podcast at any time, but my first solo did not go well. Humans up to no good ruined it for me and scared the hell out of me, and so it took me a very long time to ever do that again. And but before that happened, I remember laying in my hammock, and I had made dinner and just laid there, and I was just thinking, man, this is so addictive. I could do this every weekend. This is amazing. Oh my gosh, like it was amazing. And then humans ruined it because they do that. um
um,
but, what do
Mike
you
Pine, what are you going to
yeah.
do when it gets up in your face?
Yeah.
The most honest answer anybody can give right there is nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody. And what I mean is, and that would obviously be a very stressful situation. I mean, would it be fight or flight? Would you shoot at it? Would you what? Nobody knows exactly how you're going to act in a situation like that. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that I would keep my wits about me to the point where I thought to take a picture or something.
It's
But
all we can hope.
I really don't see that ever happening. I mean, one actually coming up and getting in your face. Um, I don't know. That would be an extremely rare occurrence, I would say.
That would be, I would probably mess my pants. I'm gonna be also honest.
I
I mean,
remember
like,
when Cornell was down here, he had something come up and stood right beside his tent in the night. It woke me up. Me and my son were there, and he was yelling, "Dave, there's something outside the tent! Something outside the tent!" Of course, I come out and it's gone. And my first thought was it was a bear.
mm-hmm.
But here's the thing: we had been hearing things earlier that night before we turned in. We had left our food out. We'd cooked steaks out. Nothing touched the food. If it was a
Yeah,
bear, it would not have stopped at the tent. It would
no,
have straight for that. So, out to Cornell's not on here, but I have to share this all the time. He goes like he just, I'm not getting back in the tent. I said, well, where are you going to sleep? He said, I'll sleep in the back seat of your truck. I said, it's full of stuff. He goes, I don't care. I'll sleep in the front seat. I said, okay. So I went back to bed. Me and my son did. I'm always up early. I get up and I get outside the tent. And I'm looking, and you can see in the front seat Cornell's sitting up and the sleeping bag's over his head, and it was blithering cold. And I thought, well, he got cold. And I went over and I just tapped on the window, and he uncovered his head. I said, "Why did you get cold?" He goes, "No." He said, "You and Elijah went back to your tent and got in bed, and I was looking at all these windows and thinking, my God, what if it comes up and looks in at me?" You know?
I've seen me do it.
He stood up and he slept like that. Like, well, that's all right.
You feel vulnerable out in the woods at night, and
Just because you are.
yeah, and you think you feel safer in a car, and no, not always. I had gone out with two friends of mine, and Kendall was sitting in the back seat, and we had all got the hinky feeling at the same time and decided to go ahead and get in the truck and listen. And these are two dudes, and we get in there and Kendall's like, "Man, what if a hand just came through the window and grabbed you right now, Lauren?" And I'm like, "Why would you say that? Like, why?" And so instantly I'm just leaned over the console, like trying to get away from the window. And it's when it's that dark outside, especially, you don't know what could be creeping up on you. And especially because these things belly crawl. And that's what gets me. When I turn into a sissy is when I think about these things belly crawling up on me. I get freaked out. I do. I'll admit it.
The sighting I was talking about, the face-to-face sighting with the two off-duty police officers, that's what it had, excuse me, that's what it had been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Take a real quick.
Yeah.
Where they were camped was at the bottom of this straight up ridge, and it dipped down into this kind of pocket and then came up into a swell, probably mound about oh, 8 or 10 foot tall, maybe. But they were hearing something on the other side of that from their camp. They thought it was an armadillo in the leaves. So they were going to shoot the armadillo, and they walked around the edge of I'm calling it a berm for lack of a word. And when they got across, this thing was on its belly on the other side of it. What they were hearing was this thing scooting up so it could look over at them. Oh. And when they come around the edge of it, it stood up right in their face. And I asked Dan, I said, "What did you do?" And I'm not going to use his exact language, but he basically said, "Screamed like a girl and ran." And the other guy that was with him, his name was Jeff, he froze in his tracks. Dan said he had to grab him by the back of the collar and give him a good jerk. They left all their equipment down there, abandoned everything. And Dan said they actually sent a friend of theirs back the next day for the stuff. And like I say, when they got in contact with me through the website I had at the time, and I drove up there and met with him at his home. And then he led me to that area. And he did not, the other guy, Jeff, he wouldn't even come back.
Yeah.
When we did Bigfootville, he was the guy acting scared.
Mm-hmm.
Vision on that. That wasn't an act. That was the first time he had been back down there since then. Now, Dan, by that time, the first time I went down there, he left before it got dark. He didn't want to be down there. And I guess since I didn't get eaten staying down there, he thought, well, it'll be all right. So we actually went back into that area several times. The last time I was actually there was when we shot that scene for Bigfootville.
Yeah. The friend that went back to get their gear, that's a good friend. That's a good friend. Or he just didn't believe they saw what they saw.
We tell a lot of stories about my times going up to that area, but that would take a long time.
Yeah.
But one time we were there, and he brought some friends of his that were law enforcement also. And I remember one of them had an AR-15 with him, and I'm like, I've got this thing about being in the woods with armed people I don't know. I knew Dan, and I was a reserve police officer here in Ada for 13 years, but at that time I hadn't done anything like that. And I remember it's the guy that had the semi-automatic rifle. I said, "I'm taking for granted that you're a highly trained individual. It's not going to accidentally shoot me." He goes, "Oh no, nothing to worry about."
Yeah.
And he was, to his credit. We went walking through the woods at night, and there was a little clearing there. We was walking through it. And I don't know if you've ever heard a baby deer scream.
Yes.
Okay. He stepped on a little newborn fawn, and it let out this scream. and he didn't shoot or anything, but he literally, it looked like he just kind of melted into the ground.
Oh, that poor man.
I laughed so hard I about threw up. I mean, it was so funny, just the way. And I said, "Well, I said you didn't start shooting."
I feel so bad for him, but it's so
Oh,
funny.
it just looked like he just lost all of his muscle control. He just kind of almost collapsed.
Oh my goodness. I can
And
picture
of
it.
course, I had a flashlight, too. Is
Yeah.
not, but I immediately saw the deer when it screamed, but he was right on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
the most frightened I've been has always been by the most non-threatening forced animals, and except for hogs. Like I've come up on a group of hogs before and been terrified, but just I jumped a deer quite a few times, and like older deer, and just your heart will jump out of your chest, or jump in a flock of birds. I've done that before and scared the ever living. My heart just stops, and I don't know what's got me. But yeah, my little brother, he stepped on a baby deer whenever we were picking blueberries one time, and it was the same
they
thing.
let out this just ear shattering scream.
Yeah.
It's all
So did so did my brother actually,
oh my
and
god, yeah.
he was young, and he also almost stepped on a rattlesnake. He doesn't hunt blueberries anymore, actually.
Well, when I'm out, and like I say, I do a lot of these camps by myself and stuff, and I've heard you say you do some solo camping too.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing. You just have to be so much more alert of everything because you're your own
Yeah.
rescue if you get snake bit or something. And
Absolutely. I cheated. I had my dog with me. So,
uh,
I had a little alarm system with me, and thank God I did for the night that I had all the shenanigans go down near my camp, because I just that was absolutely terrifying. But my dog, he alerts silently for humans or anything like that, but he oh,
tornado warning
I
here.
was about to ask. I know what that sound is. We were supposed to get that tonight. I guess it
Yeah.
went south and got you guys instead, because I don't have
Any of
anything.
you guys in chat that's not from Oklahoma, what tornado warnings mean for us here as we go outside and look.
Yes. Yeah.
you know, I
So when
mean,
I was little, I thought tornado warning meant warning there might be a tornado, and tornado watch was go outside and look for the tornado. And then it wasn't until I got older that I realized that was backwards, and that a warning means you should normal people should probably get ready to take shelter. Us, we open the door and look outside and maybe drive around.
one
That's
of the weirdest, and this is not weird in a Bigfoot kind of way, but who was I with? I was camped down and way back in the Comanches, and I believe Cornell was with me at that time, and looked up outside of camp, and here's this elderly couple in the middle of nowhere walking down this trail with a little poodle, and I'm like, "What are you guys doing here?" And they had parked uh, way off and had hiked in there. Said, "Well, we're from the city, and we just found this road and thought we're going to come back here and hike." And I said, "Well, just so you know, there's things that will eat that poodle out here. Lot of things.
I mean, you weren't lying.
And they were totally not dressed. They were like wearing shorts and sandals and just
Oh my
everything you
lord.
would never wear in an area
Like,
like
what are y'all doing out here?
that. I didn't
Just.
see them after that on the way back, so something might have got them.
Oh my god. I mean, yeah, like I can't, I just, some of the people I see out there, especially the people in the side by sides that I see riding trails, and I'm just like, what are you gonna do if your side by side breaks down or you get a flat? Because you ain't dressed for out here, that's judgy of me, I'm sure, but just I don't know. All right, so last question. Where do you have any upcoming appearances or conferences or anything that you're planning to attend besides the Night Colors Camp out? Just kidding. Oh no.
Well, I am going to try to come to. That's
Okay.
not very far. What is that on, like a Friday and Saturday or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll be staying probably Thursday through Sunday because it's spring break for my kids. So we all go just spend the week there and smell like a bunch of Bigfoot by the time we leave. But yeah, it's
Now, what part of that place do you camp there in the public areas, or go deeper in, or?
right when you go in McGee Creek, the WMA, God, the big hunters campground there. It's like a big campground. There's, gravel spaces and stuff. And then farther back are the tent spaces. There's running water and some latrine toilets. But there's no bathrooms really. There's no showers, anything like that. There's no electric hookup, and there's no cell service. So when you come out there, just be prepared that you're out there to soak up some nature, which I know you're used to. But I'm talking to all the others. We had our first one last year for this particular camp out. It was so much fun. Everybody had a blast. You go hike off during the day and find all the beautiful places around McGee, and it's a lot of fun and get to meet some amazing people. So
Yeah, that I'll try. But as far as your other question, I don't have anything planned. They have
okay,
me down. I'm supposed to talk at Honaby again next year.
okay,
Um, but other than that, just my normal going off into the woods.
yeah. Well, that works. I'm sure you'll get booked for some more stuff. It seems like
Well, and
they.
Troy Hudson, that gathers people together for that, he had actually talked to me about doing it the year before, and I'd just kind of blown it off. I'd never even considered it. And then I don't know if do you know Evans Bailey?
I do.
Okay, apparently his like the librarian here in Ada is one of his kinfolks, and
Okay.
she invited him to come down and talk, and he was nice enough to invite me to bring my book. Of course, then I only had one book.
Yeah.
Bring it there and talk a little bit, and I said, "Yeah, sure." It's across the street from my music shop, so
Mm-hmm.
and I actually enjoyed it. And then after that, I told Troy, like, "Yeah, I think I will if you really want me
Yeah.
to." And it
Well,
was
that's awesome.
got to hang out with some nice folks.
Mm-hmm.
Shelley Covington, Montana, she was fascinating.
Yeah.
Uh, Very nice. Pete Buffalo Head, he was our other roommate, him and his wife. And there was a friend of Shelley's that stayed with her, uh, and her name was Henry. And
I
she
love
was,
Henry.
oh, you know Henry then.
Henry Edge. She
And I
is
was,
one of.
I had
She's
never met her before, and I
amazing.
got lost trying to find this cabin because I drove up there in the dark. And
Yeah.
I just got this road, and I thought, well, there's somebody. I'm just going to follow that truck just on the off chance it goes there. And when we got to this area, we're in the middle of nowhere. I pull up beside it, and I see it's a woman. I'm like, okay, either this is where I'm supposed to be, or this is going to look really weird. She looks at me. She goes, "You're right where you're supposed to be, David Wilbanks."
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I love Henry. She is one of
uh,
my favorite people on the whole planet. You are very lucky, though, that you caught her going to the destination that she was supposed to go to because Henry is known for showing up when and where she wants to. We could plan a camp out for Friday. She'll get there Sunday morning after stopping along the way because she found a spot she wanted to camp over here, and then she'll show up. So that worked out. That was
that's
fate.
the only time. That's the only time I've ever been around her at all. She was
She's
very
awesome.
nice too. But I mean, it's a big cabin. It's a house basically there by Neshoba, and it was
Hmm.
each person had their own wing and room
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So it was very nice. So
Hmm. Well, that's awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Well worth the wait, I will say.
yeah,
And
it was fun.
I very much hope you get to come to the Night Callers Camp Out or at least visit the Bigfoot Symposium the weekend before in Stillwell. I know a lot of your fans will be there, so
It's
come
a
by
big
and
symposium.
the Oklahoma Bigfoot Symposium in Stillwell, and I can send you directions to the actual event and everything.
What's
But
the date on that?
that's the weekend before, so I think it's the 10th.
10th of March.
Mm-hmm. It's that weekend before, yeah. So it's always a good time. They always have good speakers. They have amazing food. DW's wife makes the best food in the whole world. That's where I met Pyromedic and a ton of other people. One of my very good friends, Dennis, I met him there. So good people around there. There's gonna be a bonfire afterwards, and I think they do a night hike and all kinds of stuff. So definitely, try to make one of those events so I can meet you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Pyro, he helped me out at Hona. He carried my books in and all that stuff.
Awesome. He's
Nice
he's a really
guy.
great guy. Really
And
great guy. All
William,
right.
thanks to William for
Yep.
pointing me this direction, for pointing you
And
my
Claude.
way.
Yep. And Claude also gave you a shout out, and quite a few others. So, yeah.
All
All
right.
right.
Well,
Well,
thanks
thank
for
you
having
so
me on.
much. Absolutely. And you be safe getting home, okay?
All right.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us tonight. And I really enjoyed this chat with David. He is full of knowledge, and he's one of those good Oklahomans that I would like to camp with. That's what I kept thinking the whole time, is I just want to go research with this guy. So hopefully I get to do that. As I said, we have the Night Callers Camp out March 17th through the 20th. I hope that some of you can make it, come hang out with the Night Callers crew. If not, there's always next year. So we have the Oklahoma Bigfoot Symposium March 10th. The following weekend is the Night Callers Camp Out. The following weekend after that is the Falk Monster Camp Out in Falk, Arkansas, put on by Keith Crabtree and Squatch Dogs. So you guys have a whole buffet of Bigfoot events to go to in March. We're calling March Bigfoot Month, me and my people. So I hope you guys get to go to one of those events, and I hope you guys enjoyed this show. So stay safe.